So for this week, we'll be talking about cloud risk management. So how organizations think about it and handle the risk when they're operating in the cloud. So we'll go through what makes cloud environments complex in the security standpoint and how risks get managed across all different players involved and the framework that ties them up all together. So let's get into it. So for question number one, we need to discuss the cloud ecosystem. So basically, a cloud ecosystem isn't just one provider and a one customer. So you got providers, brokers, consumers, and they all interact with each other. So that creates some characteristics that are worth understanding, such as these ones. So you got broad network access. So if your services are reachable from almost anywhere, that means your attack surface is a lot bigger than it would be if you're just using it, like I said, on premise. Then you got like decreased visibility. So if you move to cloud, you hand over the control of the infrastructure to the provider. So you can see what's happening at that level. So there's like a significant shift on because you are clueless and you don't have the visibility. Now you got dynamic boundaries. Since you can scale up and down automatically, you can connect or disconnect services, and basically you can spin up your resources. That means the edge of your system is constantly changing. So if you got like a static security controls, they wouldn't work on cloud environment. Now you got multi-tenancy. So your workloads are sharing physical infrastructure with other organization, and this is where data residency matters as well, since depends on where your provider hosts the data. There's like a legal and regulatory requirements come um, that will need to make sure that it's handled regularly as well. Then you got like share scale and complexity, since cloud environments are complex, so it makes it difficult to handle security in the cloud ecosystem. But what can we do to manage those risks? Before that, the consumer must understand that we got like different models, such as public, private, hybrid, community. So everyone has like a different risk profiles, and it can also have different responsibilities. So if you have public deployment, it gives you the least control, and private gives you the most. Maybe hybrid or community, it sits somewhere in between, depending on how you are setting it up. And now you got service models such as IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So each one shifts at a different amount of responsibility to the provider. So if you got IaaS, you manage the OS and others, while SaaS, the provider handles almost everything. So you're just responsible for your data and your access control. So it's really important because responsibility is where we make sure that the risk is manageable. Then you got like shared responsibility. So every time you bring in like a third party, maybe a broker or like an integrated tool, you add somebody on your ecosystem, and that security of that or somebody you cannot control. So that's what makes cloud ecosystem harder to manage as well. Now, how do we manage the risk on the ecosystem level? So the key point here is that you cannot focus on your own internal controls anymore, since you have to think about the whole ecosystem, and there's a lot of actors involved in that set ecosystem. You got providers, brokers, consumers. So everybody has a role, and there cannot be gaps in accountability. That's why we got SLA, or the service level agreements. So this is where the main mechanism for formalizing their risk management. So SLA are not just about uptime or like availability. It also notes it or like it defines where your security expectation and what level of risk each party is committing to. Now you got to have like a real time monitoring as well, since cloud environments move very fast, and yep, there's like incidents or threats that comes up, and the information must be shared across all actors quickly. And it's not just about a technical problem or technical role. Senior leaders and executive must be accountable for the risk decision as well. So it's not just about an IT problem, it's about a governance one. Yep. So RMF, or risk management framework, this is like a structured approach that brings all of these together. So the core idea is that the security gets integrated into SLDZ from the start, okay? Not at the end. So you have to start with this one and not just put it at the end when everything is in place. So it works across three tiers, which is the organizational governance, and then you got business processes, and then you got information system at the bottom. So information system is where most of your day-to-day operation work happens. And yeah, so that's like the tier three. Now it is grounded in well-established standards such as the NIS, the ISO. So these are like widely recognized and reflect a lot of accumulated security practice because it's like industry standard. So if we apply these NIST or like ISO, if we apply this specifically to cloud environments, it becomes RMF for CE. So that's the RMF for cloud ecosystem. So it's the same framework, but it adapts to the account of the dynamic nature of cloud architecture. Now, what is the risk management activities and risk management framework steps? Now, we got 6 steps, and these are grouped into 3 activities, such as risk assessment, risk treatment, and risk monitoring. So they run continuously alongside with the SDLC. And yeah, we got step 1 and 2, which is the risk assessment. So it's about understanding what you're dealing with. You start by categorizing the system based on the potential impact of the breach. So if you got like a high impact system, you get more rigorous treatment. And from there, you identify security and privacy requirements. You select your baseline controls and get the security plan approved. So in our F4CE, which I will be discussed later, I'll show you later. But this step also covers like selecting the cloud architecture or like choosing a provider or like negotiating the SLA. And yeah, we got risk treatment on step 3, 4, and 5. So if we got step 3, which where we implement our controls, and then on step 4, we assess that set control if they are working as intended. And basically, it's this all in cloud context. And then you got provider controls and consumer controls. They get evaluated separately. Then on step 5, you got authorization. Senior management might formally decides based on the residual risk, or these residual risks are like the risks that you're willing to take. So they can authorize if the system is ready to operate. So they must be a documented acceptance of the risks that you're willing to take on the organization level. Now for risk monitoring on step 6, so monitoring means that it's continuously ongoing. So you monitor controls, you track changes in the system, you conduct like impact analysis, and you report on security issues. So I'll show you the RMF for CE. So this is the RMF for cloud ecosystem, which I have discussed. We got 6 steps, and it is following the SDLC. Now for step 6 that I was discussing earlier, um, on the step 6, if your provider's security posture degrades, you need to think of, or you need to reauthorize and reconsider the arrangement or the SLA that involved. Now, provider face like a lot of challenges. So they're building security controls for a platform that will be used by different consumers and in many different contexts actually. But they have to design those decisions before they know who those consumers are or what data they'll be handling. So what they do is like they build like a generalized control and they make like a baseline chosen based on effectiveness, efficiency, legal and regulatory compliance. So the advantage is that you can centralize the security. Maybe a large provider can invest in capabilities that individual organization cannot afford, such as advanced threat detection, physical security, and stuff. But if they have like a centralized and baseline security, there's like a trade-off on customization. So customer cannot modify that set security, and maybe they can layer additional controls at the top, but that's where we are met by the customer specific risk management. So that's their responsibility if they put like additional controls. But what matters is that the providers provide the broad baseline of the security, and it depends on the consumer how they willing to upgrade or how they're willing to increase their security posture. Now, how do we adopt cloud-based solution? So we got like 10 steps. So what's it? So you start by defining what the service needs to do, then you identify the functional requirements. That's basically how you plan a system, right? Like um, services, functional requirements, and so off. Then on step 3, this is where security and privacy requirements come in. So you need to input all of these before you decide an architecture. So for step 4, you need to decide what deployment model you'll be using, like what service model is it. So these choices directly shape the risk profile you'll be managing. And then for step 5 and 6, it involves identifying the relevant cloud actors and reviewing their security posture. Maybe you identify your broker or like your provider and review their security posture. And you need to understand what controls are already in place before you build your own. So it's not gonna be um, you're just it's not gonna be redundant. Yeah. And then for step 7, you identify the gaps. As I discussed earlier, the provider baseline covers the baseline of the security, but they don't cover everything. So that's why on step 8 and 9, you need to fill those gaps to what your organization needs. And organize the parameters, and you control or enhance if the baseline is not sufficient. And last one is the step 10, which is the documentation. So this is what makes the system auditable. So this gives you a process, or like authorization process, that can monitor the foundation of the cloud that you're working from. So that's it. Thank you for listening.